Back with my read aloud series from Indian Economic Development textbook for class 11. I'm doing the last of unit 3, that is chapter 9, Environment and Sustainable Development. Unit 3, that is current challenges facing the Indian economy. In that, doing chapter 9, Environment and Sustainable Development. The chapter begins with anonymous words about the environment. The environment, left to itself, can continue to support life for millions of years. The single most unstable and potentially disruptive element in the scheme is the human species. Human beings with modern technology have the capacity to bring about, intentionally or unintentionally, far-reaching and irreversible changes in the environment. So this is an anonymous clip from somewhere. Introduction. In the earlier chapters, we discussed the main economic issues faced by the Indian economy. The economic development that we have achieved so far has come at a very heavy price, at the cost of environmental quality. As we step into an era of globalization that promises higher economic growth, we have to bear in mind the adverse consequences of the past development path on our environment and consciously choose a path of sustainable development. To understand the unsustainable path of development that we have taken and the challenges of sustainable development, we have to first understand the significance and contribution of environment to economic development. With this in mind, this chapter is divided into 3 sections. The first part deals with the functions and the role of environment. The second section discusses the state of India's environment. And the third section deals with the steps and strategies to achieve sustainable development. So, environment, definition and functions. Environment is defined as the total planetary inheritance and the totality of all resources. It includes all the biotic and abiotic factors that influence each other. While all living elements, the birds, animals and plants, forests, fisheries, etc., are biotic elements, abiotic elements include air, water, land, etc. Rocks and sunlight are all examples of abiotic elements of the environment. A study of the environment then calls for a study of the interrelationship between these biotic and abiotic components of the environment. Functions of the environment. The environment performs 4 vital functions. It supplies resources. Resources here include both renewable and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are those which can be used without the possibility of the resource becoming depleted or exhausted. That is, a continuous supply of the resource remains available. Examples of renewable resources are the trees in the forest and the fishes in the ocean. Now, non-renewable resources, on the other hand, are those which get exhausted with extraction and use. For example, fossil fuel, it assimilates waste. It sustains life by providing genetic and biodiversity, and fourth, it also provides aesthetic services like scenery, etc. The environment is able to perform these functions without any interruption as long as the demand on these functions is within the carrying capacity. This implies that the resource extraction is not above the rate of regeneration of the resource, and the waste generated are within the assimilating capacity of the environment. When this is not so, the environment fails to perform its third and vital function of life sustenance, and this results in an environmental crisis. This is the situation today all over the world. The rising population of the developing countries and the affluent consumption and production standards of the developed world have placed a huge stress on the environment in terms of the first 2 functions. Many resources have become extinct, and the waste generated are beyond the absorptive capacity of the environment. Now, absorptive capacity means Absorptive capacity means the ability of the environment to absorb degradation. The result, we are today at the threshold of environmental crisis. The past development has polluted and dried up rivers and other aquifers, making water an economic good. Besides, the intensive and extensive extraction of both renewable and non-renewable resources has exhausted some of these vital resources, and we are compelled to spend huge amounts on technology and research to explore new resources. Added to these are the health costs of degraded environmental quality. Degraded environmental quality. Decline in air and water quality. 70% of water in India is polluted, have resulted in increased incidence of respiratory and waterborne diseases. Hence, the expenditure on health is also rising. To make matters worse, global environmental issues such as global warming and ozone depletion also contribute to increased financial commitments for the government. Thus, it is clear that the opportunity cost of negative environmental impacts are high. The biggest question that arises is, are environmental problems new to this century? If so, why? The answer to this question requires some elaboration. In the early days when civilization just began, or before this phenomenal increase in population and before countries took to industrialization, the demand for environmental resources and services was much less than their supply. This meant that pollution was within the absorptive capacity of the environment, and the rate of resource extraction was less than the rate of regeneration of these resources. Hence, environmental problems did not arise. Look at this picture. This figure shows Damodar Valley is one of India's most industrialized regions. Pollutants from the heavy industries are along the banks of the Damodar River are converting it into an ecological disaster. So, environmental problems arose with population explosion and with the advent of industrial revolution to meet the growing needs of the expanding population. Things changed. The result was that the demand for resources for both production and consumption went beyond the rate of regeneration of the resources. The pressure on the absorptive capacity of the environment increased tremendously. This trend continues even today. Thus, what has happened is a reversal of supply-demand relationship for environmental quality. We are now faced with increased demand for environmental resources and services, but their supply is limited due to overuse and misuse. Hence, the environmental issues of waste generation and pollution have become critical today. So the next is state of India's environment. India has abundant natural resources in terms of rich quality of soil, hundreds of rivers and tributaries, lush green forests, plenty of mineral deposits beneath the land surface, vast stretches of the Indian Ocean, ranges of mountains, etc. The black soil of the Deccan Plateau is particularly suitable for cultivation of cotton, leading to concentration of textile industries in this region. The Indo-Gangetic plains, spread from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal, are one of the most fertile, intensively cultivated and densely populated regions in the world. India's forests, though unevenly distributed, provide green cover for a majority of its population and natural cover for its wildlife. Large deposits of iron ore, coal and natural gas are found in the country. India alone accounts for nearly 20% of the world's total iron ore reserves. Bauxite, copper, chromate, diamonds, gold, lead, ignite, magnesium, zinc, uranium, etc. are also available in different parts of the country. However, the developmental activities in India have resulted in pressure on its finite natural resources, besides creating impacts on human health and well-being. The threat to India's environment poses a dichotomy: threat of poverty induced environmental degradation, and at the same time, threat of pollution from affluence and a rapidly growing industrial sector. Air pollution, water contamination, soil erosion, deforestation, and wildlife extinction are some of the most pressing environmental concerns of India. The priority issues identified are: 1. Land degradation, 2. Biodiversity loss, 3. Air pollution with special reference to vehicular pollution in urban cities, 4th, management of fresh water, and 5th, solid waste management. Land in India suffers from varying degrees and types of degradation, stemming mainly from unstable use and inappropriate management practices. Figure 9.3 shows deforestation that leads to land degradation, biodiversity loss, and air pollution.